My wife abandoned me at a train station after what she called a little argument, but we both knew it was really about the $600,000 she and my son had stolen from me. And the old man who saved me that day was about to save me from something far worse than being stranded 50 kilometers from home. Welcome back to your ultimate destination for gripping revenge stories, family betrayals, shocking betrayals, and emotional justice. Subscribe now and join a community and tell us where you're watching from. Turn on the notification bell for our next story. Are you ready to witness the ultimate payback? Let's get started. My name is ZAHA. I'm 68 years old, and I'm telling you this story because somebody out there needs to hear it. Maybe you've been betrayed by the people you trusted most. Maybe you're standing where I stood, choosing between revenge and redemption, between destroying your family or saving it. CTA number 1. If you've ever had to choose between getting even and letting go, drop a comment below. Your story matters, and I want to hear it. The little argument happened on a Tuesday morning in October in the front seat of my wife's Honda Accord on the way to the Riverside station in Pennsylvania. Margaret was driving, her hands gripping the wheel like she was strangling it, her jaw set in that way that meant she'd rather chew glass than admit she was wrong. We'd been married 43 years. I knew all her tells. "You're being dramatic," she said, her eyes fixed on the road ahead. As usual. Dramatic. I let the word hang in the air between us. Our son and my wife stole $600,000 from me, and I'm being dramatic. We didn't steal anything. Then what do you call forging my signature on property sale documents? What do you call selling my dead brother's farm behind my back and keeping all the money? Her knuckles went white on the steering wheel. It's not that simple. It's exactly that simple, Margaret. The station appeared ahead, a small brick building that serviced 3 Amtrak trains a day, surrounded by a parking lot that had seen better decades. Margaret pulled up to the curb, the car still running, and I realized with a cold clarity what was about to happen. "I can't do this right now," she said, staring straight ahead. "I have book club in 45 minutes. I turned to look at her, really look at her. The woman I'd married at 25 was still there in the shape of her face, but everything else had changed. Or maybe I just finally noticed how much we'd both changed, how many years we'd spent living parallel lives under the same roof. "Book club," I repeated. "Your son commits fraud. You help him do it, and you're worried about book club. He's your son too." She whipped around to face me, and there it was, not guilt, not shame, but anger. She was angry at me. Where were you when Daniel was drowning? When he was crying to me about losing everything? When he's 40 years old, Margaret. He's not a child who needs saving. He's a con artist who needs consequences. He's our son. And I'm your husband. Doesn't that mean anything? The question sat between us like a third passenger, heavy and uncomfortable. Margaret's voice dropped to something cold and final. "Get out." "What?" "Get out of the car. You'll miss your train to the lawyer's office. The one where you're going to destroy your family over money. This isn't about money. Get out." I stared at her, waiting for her to take it back, to soften, to remember that we'd built a life together. But her face remained hard, closed off, a stranger wearing my wife's features. I unbuckled my seatbelt with shaking hands, 68 years old, and my hands were shaking like a scolded child, and opened the door. "Margaret." But she was already looking straight ahead again, waiting for me to leave so she could drive away and pretend this wasn't happening. I stepped out onto the curb, turned back to say something. Anything. And that's when I realized. "My wallet," I said. I left it on the dresser. For just a moment, something flickered in her eyes. Regret, maybe. Or satisfaction. I couldn't tell anymore. "Then I guess you'll have to figure something out," she said quietly. "Like I've been figuring things out while you buried yourself in newspapers and ignored what was happening to our family. So this is my fault. You commit fraud, and somehow I'm the bad guy. You stopped being a husband years ago, ZAHA. You stopped being a father. You were just there, existing, taking up space." Her voice cracked. "Daniel needed money, and needed it fast, and I made a choice to save my son. Maybe it was the wrong choice. But at least I made one. At least I did something." The words hit like physical blows. I stood there on the curb, the October wind cutting through my jacket, watching this woman I'd spent 43 years with tear down our entire marriage in 30 seconds. "I'm going to that lawyer," I said, my voice shaking with rage. "I'm pressing charges. Against both of you. Then I guess we'll see you in court." She drove away. Just like that. The Honda merged into traffic, turned at the light, and disappeared, leaving me standing alone at a train station 50 kilometers from home with no wallet, no phone. I'd left that charging on the kitchen counter, and no way to get anywhere. I walked into the station on autopilot, my mind spinning. 3 days ago, I'd been a retired electrician living a quiet life. Then I'd found the property deed in the mail, my brother David's farm, sold 4 months ago for $1.2 million. His will had split it 50-50 between us. David had died of cancer 6 months back, and I'd thought the estate was still being settled. Except it wasn't. My son Daniel and my wife Margaret had somehow sold it, forged my signature, and pocketed my $600,000. When I confronted Margaret 2 nights ago, she'd admitted it. No shame, just defensive anger. Daniel was in trouble, gambling debts, loan sharks, threats against his life. She was protecting her baby boy. They were going to pay me back eventually. They were going to tell me eventually. Eventually. I'd spent 2 days in a rage, so pure it felt like it might consume me. I'd contacted David's lawyer, gotten copies of the fraudulent documents, consulted with a criminal attorney. The case was airtight. I could destroy them both. Margaret could face jail time. Daniel definitely would. And I wanted it. God help me, I wanted to watch them burn. The station was nearly empty. A young couple scrolling on their phones, an elderly woman dozing on a bench, a businessman typing furiously on a laptop. The departures board showed the next train to Philadelphia in 90 minutes. From there, I could catch a connection to Harrisburg where David's lawyer had his office. But I had no money for a ticket. I stood in the middle of that small station, the fluorescent lights humming overhead, and calculated my options. Riverside was 50 kilometers from home. I could walk it. Would take most of the day, probably into the evening, and my knees hadn't been good for years, but I still had my pride. Or I could swallow that pride, walk the 2 kilometers back home, face Margaret, beg for my wallet, and admit I needed her help. The thought made me physically ill. I started walking toward the exit, planning my route, when I heard a voice behind me. "Excuse me, friend." I turned. An old man stood near the bench by the entrance, a white cane in his right hand, dark sunglasses covering his eyes despite the overcast day. He was dressed neatly, pressed khaki pants, a button-down shirt, a windbreaker, shoes polished to a shine. His hair was silver, neatly combed, and his posture was straight despite what I guessed was an age close to my own. "Yes," I said, my voice coming out harsher than I intended. He tilted his head slightly, like he was listening to something beyond my voice, the quality of the air around me, maybe, or the anger radiating off me in waves. "You're planning to walk 50 kilometers, he said. It wasn't a question. I blinked, caught off guard. "How did you?" "I heard the argument," he said gently. "These old stations have strange acoustics. Sound carries in ways you wouldn't expect. I heard your wife say you'd have to figure something out, and I heard you standing here for the past 5 minutes, breathing hard, doing calculations in your head. I didn't know what to say. This stranger, this blind stranger, had somehow read my entire situation from sound alone. Walk back and face humiliation," he continued, his voice soft but certain. "Or walk forward and face exhaustion. Those are the options you're considering, aren't they?" "It's none of your business," I said, but the words lacked bite. "You're absolutely right," the old man said. "It's not my business at all. But I'm going to make it my business anyway, because I'm old enough to recognize a man standing at a crossroads, and I'm old enough to know what happens when you choose the wrong path." He extended his hand toward me. "My name is James. James Morrison, and I'm going to make you an offer." I didn't take his hand. "I don't need charity." "Good, because I'm not offering charity." He smiled slightly, a sad smile that seemed to carry the weight of decades. "I'm offering conspiracy." "What?" "My driver is coming to pick me up in about 10 minutes. I've been visiting my sister. She lives about 3 miles from here. When he arrives, you're going to pretend to be my friend. Someone I ran into at the station. Someone I'm giving a ride to because we're heading in the same general direction." I stared at him, confused. "Why would you?" "Because I've been where you are," James said quietly. "Not the same circumstances, but the same crossroads. The same rage. The same calculations. And I chose wrong. And it cost me everything that mattered." He paused. "So let me help you. Not because you need saving from being stranded, but because you need saving from what you're planning to do when you get where you're going." The words hit me like cold water. "You don't know what I'm planning." "Don't I?" James tilted his head again. "I heard the way your voice changed when you said, I'm pressing charges. I heard the satisfaction underneath the anger. You're not just going to a lawyer's office, friend. You're going to war. My jaw tightened. They deserve it. Maybe they do, James said. But the question isn't what they deserve. The question is what you can live with after the war is over. Act 2, the catalyst. A car pulled up to the curb, a clean Toyota Camry, dark blue, maybe 7 or 8 years old, but well-maintained. A middle-aged man stepped out, maybe late 40s, with kind eyes and a professional demeanor. Mr. Morrison, he said warmly, walking around to open the back door. I hope your visit with your sister went well. It did, Marcus. Thank you. James's hand found my elbow lightly, not grabbing, just touching, orienting himself. Marcus, this is my friend ZAHA. We ran into each other here at the station. He's heading toward Millbrook, and I told him we'd give him a ride. Marcus looked at me, his eyes quick and assessing. For a moment, I thought he'd call out the obvious lie, that James and I had just met, that I was a stranger accepting help from a blind man, that something was off about this whole situation. But then his face softened into a gentle smile. Of course, any friend of Mr. Morrison's is welcome. Please, both of you. He helped James into the back seat with practiced ease, then gestured for me to follow. I hesitated on the curb, pride and desperation warring inside me. ZAHA, James said from inside the car, his voice gentle. It's okay. Get in. I got in. The car smelled like leather cleaner and the faint scent of coffee. Marcus pulled away from the curb smoothly, merging into light traffic. James sat beside me, his cane resting between his knees, his hands folded over the top with a kind of peaceful dignity that seemed impossible given his circumstances. I sat stiffly, acutely aware I was accepting help from a complete stranger based on a lie, that my wife had abandoned me, that my entire life was falling apart, and I couldn't even manage to be properly grateful. Marcus, James said conversationally, take the river route, please. It's longer, but it's a beautiful drive. Of course, Mr. Morrison. I glanced at James, confused. But you can't. See it? He smiled. No, I can't. But I can feel when we're near the river. The air changes, cooler, damper, carrying the scent of water and mud and life. And I like knowing beautiful things are nearby, even if I can't see them anymore. We drove in silence for a few minutes, and I stared out the window at suburban Pennsylvania rolling past, strip malls and gas stations and residential neighborhoods with their neat lawns and two-car garages. Lives being lived behind those walls. Families having breakfast, arguing about trivial things, not knowing how quickly it could all fall apart. How long were you married? James asked suddenly. The question made me flinch. How did you know? The way your wife spoke to you. That particular brand of contempt doesn't develop overnight. It takes years, sometimes decades, and it only happens between people who once loved each other very much. I watched the river appear through the trees, sunlight sparkling on water that didn't care about my problems. 43 years, I said finally. Ah, James said, and there was a world of understanding in that single sound. The dangerous years. What does that mean? The years when you've been together so long that you forget you're still two separate people. When the marriage becomes more important than the individuals in it. And somewhere along the way, both of you disappear into the we and forget there ever was an I and you. His words cut too close to something I'd been feeling for years, but couldn't articulate. She helped our son steal from me, I said, surprised by the bitterness in my voice. $600,000. My brother's inheritance. They forged documents, sold property that was supposed to be mine, and kept all the money. James was quiet for a long moment. That's not a little thing. No, that's betrayal. Yes. And now you're going to make them pay. It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. Yes. How? I turned to look at him. His face was calm, patient, waiting. Criminal charges, I said. Fraud, forgery, theft. My lawyer says the case is airtight. My wife could face jail time. My son definitely will. And you want that? Yes. The word came out fierce, certain. They deserve it. Maybe they do, James said quietly. Can I tell you a story? Do I have a choice? He smiled slightly. Not really. Captive audience and all that. Marcus turned onto a smaller road that ran parallel to the river. Trees lined both sides, their leaves starting to turn orange and gold in the autumn sun. 15 years ago, James began, I had 3 children. 2 daughters and a son. I'd built a successful construction business from nothing, started as a day laborer, worked my way up, eventually owned my own company. 30 employees, contracts all over the state, worth several $1,000,000. He paused, his fingers tightening on his cane. My wife died when I was 55. Cancer, fast and brutal. 6 months from diagnosis to funeral. And suddenly I was alone, grieving, running a company I'd built with her support, trying to figure out how to keep living. I found myself leaning forward slightly, drawn into his story despite myself. My children were in their 30s then, all married, building their own lives. They helped where they could, but they had their own families, their own problems. I understood that. I didn't expect them to put their lives on hold for me. What happened? I asked. James's face darkened. Money. It always comes down to money, doesn't it? I'd set up a trust for my grandchildren's education. About $400,000, meant to ensure they could go to college without debt. My oldest daughter, Elizabeth, she came to me about a year after my wife died. Her husband's business was failing. They were about to lose their house. She asked if she could borrow from the trust temporarily, just to get through the crisis. She'd pay it back. Did you let her? I said no. The trust was for the grandchildren, not for emergency loans. It was legally protected for that specific purpose. I thought I was doing the right thing, teaching responsibility, maintaining boundaries. That sounds reasonable, I said. James smiled bitterly. That's what I thought too. But Elizabeth got angry, really angry. Said I was putting money before family, that I'd always cared more about the business than about my children, that I was a cold-hearted bastard who couldn't show love if it didn't come with a price tag. That's not fair. Maybe it wasn't, but maybe it was also a little bit true. James's voice softened. I'd worked 70-hour weeks while my kids were growing up. I'd missed recitals and sports games and parent-teacher conferences because I was building something I thought would secure their futures. I'd chosen work over presents more times than I could count. The car passed a park where children played on swings, their laughter drifting through the closed windows. What happened with your daughter? I asked. She did it anyway. Elizabeth and her 2 siblings, they got together and found a legal loophole. Something about a technicality in how the trust was structured. They drained it. All $400,000. Split it 3 ways. I felt my chest tighten. That's theft. Yes. Betrayal? Absolutely. Legal? Technically, just barely, because of that loophole. James's jaw clenched. I found out 6 months later when the accountant flagged it during tax season. By then, the money was gone. My children had taken what I'd saved for their children and used it to pay off debts, buy cars, fund vacations. What did you do? I asked, though I could already guess. I burned it all down, James said quietly. I hired the best lawyer in the state. I sued all 3 of them. I couldn't get the money back. They'd spent most of it, but I could make them pay in other ways. I used everything I had. Court battles that lasted 3 years. I won eventually. They ended up with judgments against them, liens on their properties, their credit ruined. Good, I said fiercely. They deserved it. That's what I thought, James said. I won my case. I got my revenge. I proved I was right, and they were wrong. He turned his head toward me, and even though I couldn't see his eyes behind the dark glasses, I felt the weight of his gaze. And it cost me everything that mattered. What do you mean? The lawsuit destroyed what was left of our family. My children stopped speaking to me. Completely. No phone calls, no visits, no contact at all. I have 7 grandchildren, ZAHA. 7. And I've never met 5 of them. The 2 oldest, they knew me before the lawsuit. They were 10 and 8 when it started. Now they're 25 and 23, and they won't return my calls. His voice cracked slightly. My son tried to reconcile about 5 years ago. Reached out through a lawyer, said he wanted to try to heal things. And you know what I did? I refused. I was still so angry, so righteous in my rage, that I turned him away. Told him if he wanted forgiveness, he could start by paying back what he stole. He should have, I said. Maybe. But he died in a car accident 2 years later. Died thinking his father hated him. And I never got another chance. The car fell silent except for the soft hum of the engine and the whisper of tires on asphalt. The revenge I got, James continued, his voice barely above a whisper. It felt good for about 6 months. Sweet and satisfying, like justice served. But it digests like poison, ZAHA. It eats you from the inside out until there's nothing left but bitterness and regret. Your situation was different, I said, but the words sounded weak even to me. Was it? My children betrayed me for money. Your wife and son betrayed you for money. I chose revenge and lost my family. You're about to make the same choice. They deserve to pay. Yes. James's voice rose, sharper now. Yes, they do. They deserve consequences. But the question isn't what they deserve, ZAHA. The question is, can you live with the consequences of giving them what they deserve? I opened my mouth to argue, but nothing came out. I'm 72 years old, James said, his voice returning to that gentle, sad tone. I live alone in a house that's too big for one person. I have enough money to be comfortable. The business did well. I sold it eventually. But I eat dinner by myself every night. I celebrate holidays alone. I sit in doctors' waiting rooms with no one to hold my hand when they give me bad news. He turned his face toward the window, towards scenery he couldn't see. And every single day, I wish I'd chosen differently. Not because they didn't deserve punishment, but because I deserved better than becoming the kind of man who valued being right more than being loved. Act 3. Rising tension. The car turned off the river road and back toward more populated areas. We were getting closer to my neighborhood, closer to the moment when I'd have to face Margaret again, closer to the decision that would define the rest of my life. You went blind, I said suddenly, the observation more question than statement. Was that because of all this? James smiled sadly. The doctors called it stress-induced optic neuropathy. Basically, my body was under so much chronic stress for so long. The lawsuit, the family destruction, the isolation, that it damaged my optic nerves progressively. I started losing my sight about 7 years ago, fully blind for the last 5. I'm sorry, I said automatically. Don't be. It's fitting, in a way. I spent years refusing to see what I was doing to myself and my family. Now I literally can't see. He shrugged. The universe has a dark sense of humor. But you had 7 years before you went blind. I pressed. 7 years to fix things before you lost your sight. Did you try? James was quiet for a long moment. Yes and no. I tried in weak ways, leaving voicemails that went unanswered, sending letters through lawyers that were returned unopened. But I never tried in the way that mattered. What way? I never actually apologized. I never said, I was wrong. Not about what you did, that was wrong too, but about choosing revenge over reconciliation. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. I was too proud, too righteous, too convinced that I was the victim and they were the villains. But you were the victim. We were all victims, ZAHA. And we were all villains. That's what family betrayal looks like. There are no clean sides, no pure heroes and pure monsters. Just hurt people hurting each other in escalating cycles until someone is brave enough to stop. Marcus slowed the car as we entered my neighborhood. Tree-lined streets, modest houses with neat lawns, the illusion of peace and normalcy. This is my street, I said quietly. I know, James said. Marcus has excellent instincts about these things. The driver smiled slightly in the rearview mirror, but said nothing. My house appeared ahead. A 2-story colonial we'd bought 30 years ago when Daniel was 10 and his sister Emma was 7. Emma had moved to Seattle years ago, started her own life, called maybe once a month if we were lucky. The house was too big for just Margaret and me now, filled with rooms we no longer used and memories we no longer discussed. Margaret's Honda was in the driveway. She was home. Marcus pulled up to the curb and put the car in park. But neither James nor I moved to open the doors. What are you planning to do? James asked. Right now, today, when you walk in that house. Confront them, I said. I called my son while I was at the station, before I realized I had no phone. I was going to tell him to meet me at the house. But you don't have your phone. No. But he and Margaret probably already talked. He'll come. He knows I know. And then, I took a breath. And then I tell them I'm pressing charges. That I've consulted with lawyers, that the case is solid, that they're both going to pay for what they did. And that will make you feel better, James said. Not a question. Yes. For a while. And then, I don't know. You'll be right, James said softly. You'll be justified. You'll have one. And you'll be alone. I'm already alone, I said bitterly. My wife chose my son over me. My son chose himself over everyone. I'm already alone. No, James said. You're angry and hurt and betrayed. But you're not alone yet. You still have a choice. Once you light this fire, ZAHA, you can't unburn the bridge. I know. I tried. I stared at my house, at the life I'd built over 43 years that was crumbling around me. They don't deserve forgiveness, I said. Probably not, James agreed. But you deserve peace. And revenge will never give you that. How do you know? Because I'm still waiting for mine, 15 years later. The weight of those words settled over the car like a physical presence. James reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a card. Simple white cardstock with raised lettering I could feel even in the dim interior. A phone number. This is my number, he said, pressing it into my hand. Before you do anything irrevocable, call me. Not because I can stop you, but because I owe it to my younger self, the man I was 15 years ago, to try to save at least one person from making my mistakes. I took the card, feeling the raised numbers under my thumb. What if I don't call? I asked. What if I just do what I'm planning to do? Then you'll learn what I learned, James said. That revenge is a meal that tastes sweet but digests like poison. That being right is cold comfort when you're eating dinner alone for the 10,000th night in a row. That winning the battle and losing your soul is not actually winning. He reached for the door handle, then paused. One more thing, ZAHA. One thing I wish someone had told me 15 years ago. Your wife and son did something terrible. That's true. They betrayed you in a fundamental way. That's also true. But terrible people don't do good things, and good people don't do terrible things. Most of us live in the messy middle. We're flawed people who sometimes make terrible choices for complicated reasons. That doesn't excuse what they did. No, continue 10:36 p.m. It doesn't, James agreed. But it does mean they're still people. Still your family. Still capable of change and growth and becoming better than their worst moments. The question is, do you still want to be part of their lives when they do? Have you ever had to choose between being right and being at peace? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one. I stood on my front porch for a full minute before putting my key in the lock. Through the window, I could see Margaret moving around the kitchen with mechanical precision, filling the kettle, getting down mugs, going through motions that had become so automatic over 43 years that she probably didn't even think about them anymore. How many times had I come home to this exact scene? Thousands. Tens of thousands. Margaret making coffee in the late afternoon, the kitchen light warm and inviting, the illusion of domestic peace. But everything was different now. The warm light looked harsh. The familiar movements looked like a stranger's. Nothing would ever be the same again. I unlocked the door and walked in. Margaret jumped at the sound, spinning around from the counter. Her face was blotchy from crying, her eyes red-rimmed, but there was steel in her spine. She'd been crying, yes, but she'd also been preparing for battle. You came back, she said, her voice flat. I live here, I replied, closing the door behind me with deliberate care. Where else would I go? I thought you were walking to Harrisburg. 50 kilometers, you said. To see the lawyers and start your crusade. Someone gave me a ride. Who? A stranger who was kinder to me than my wife. The words hit their mark. Margaret flinched, turned back to the kettle, gripped the counter with both hands. I called Daniel, she said. He's on his way. Good. We should all be here for this conversation. ZAHA, she turned back to me, and I saw something in her face I hadn't expected. Not just anger or guilt or fear. Exhaustion. Deep, bone-tired exhaustion. Before he gets here, before this all explodes, can I say something? Can you say something? I felt my voice rising despite my attempts to control it. You've had months to say something, Margaret. Months. You sold my brother's farm, forged my signature, stole $600,000, and you had months to say something. But you didn't. So forgive me if I'm not particularly interested in what you have to say now. I know, she said, and tears started streaming down her face. I know, ZAHA. I know it was wrong. I know I betrayed you. I know I destroyed your trust. I know. Then why? The word came out as almost a shout. Why would you do it? Because Daniel was going to die, she shouted back. Because he owed money to people who were threatening to kill him. Because he came to me at 2 a.m, sobbing, terrified, saying he'd made terrible mistakes, and he didn't know how to fix them, and he needed help, and he needed it now. He's a grown man. He's my son. Margaret's voice broke completely. He's my baby boy who I held in my arms 30 seconds after he was born. He's the child who used to have nightmares and would crawl into our bed. She stopped, sobbing. He's flawed and broken and makes terrible choices, but he's mine. And when he came to me desperate and scared, I made a choice. You chose him over me. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I did. And I'm not sure I wouldn't do it again, ZAHA. I'm not sure any mother wouldn't. The honesty of it, the brutal, painful honesty, took my breath away. My brother died, I said, my voice shaking. David died in agony from cancer, and his last wish was that his farm would take care of both of us in our old age. He died, Margaret. And you and Daniel took that gift and pissed it away on gambling debts. I know. Do you? I walked closer to her, forcing her to look at me. Do you really understand what you took from me? It wasn't just money. It was my brother's final act of love. It was his way of saying, I'm leaving, but you'll be okay. And you destroyed that. Margaret was fully crying now, her shoulders shaking, her breath coming in gasps. I'm sorry. God, ZAHA, I'm so sorry. I've been carrying this for months, and every day I wake up hating myself a little more. Then why didn't you tell me? Because I was ashamed, she shouted through her tears. Because I knew what I'd done was unforgivable. Because every day I tried to find the words, and they wouldn't come. Because I'm a coward who chose the easy lie over the hard truth. The front door opened, and Daniel walked in. Our son, 40 years old, looking about 20 years older. His face was gaunt, his hair thinning, his clothes hanging off a frame that had lost too much weight too quickly. The boy who'd been captain of his high school soccer team, who'd been prom king, who'd had so much promise, that boy was gone. In his place was a man who'd been hollowed out by bad choices and worse addictions. Dad, he said quietly. I turned to look at him, and all the rage that had been building for 3 days came flooding back. Don't, I said. Don't you dare call me Dad like we're a family having a normal conversation. You stole from me. You forged my signature. You betrayed everything I thought you were. Daniel's face crumpled. I know, and I'm. You're sorry? Is that what you were going to say? You're sorry. Yes. He stepped into the house, closing the door behind him. Yes, I'm sorry. I'm so fucking sorry, Dad. I'm sorry I'm a failure. I'm sorry I gambled away everything. I'm sorry I got mixed up with loan sharks. I'm sorry I'm not the son you deserved. I'm sorry for everything. Sorry doesn't give me back what you took. I know. Daniel's voice cracked. Don't you think I know that? Don't you think I lie awake every night hating myself? Don't you think I wish I could go back and make different choices? But you can't, I said coldly. You can't go back. You can only face the consequences. And I'm here to tell you what those consequences are going to be. The room went very quiet. Margaret stood frozen by the counter, her hand over her mouth. Daniel stood by the door, tears streaming down his face, waiting for the hammer to fall. I've consulted with lawyers, I said, my voice steady now, controlled. 2 of them. A criminal attorney and a civil attorney. And they both told me the same thing. You committed fraud. Both of you. The evidence is clear. The case is airtight. ZAHA, Margaret started. I'm not finished. I looked at Daniel. The criminal attorney says you're looking at 2 to 5 years in federal prison. Your mother, because she was an accessory and not the primary perpetrator, might get probation. Might. She also might serve time. Daniel swayed slightly, like the words had physically struck him. The civil attorney says I can sue you for the full amount plus damages. I won't get $600,000. You've already blown most of it, but I can get judgments against you both. Liens on this house. Garnishment of any wages you ever earn. I can financially destroy you for the rest of your lives. Please, Daniel whispered. Please. I turned on him. Did you think about please when you were forging my signature? Did you think about mercy when you were stealing from your own father? No, Daniel said, and something in his voice made me stop. No, I didn't think about mercy. I didn't think about you at all. I only thought about myself. About my debts, my problems, my mess. I'm a selfish bastard who destroyed the people who loved him most. He sank down onto the couch, his head in his hands. I have a gambling addiction, Dad. A real, clinical, destroying my life addiction. And I didn't deal with it. I didn't get help. I just kept digging deeper and deeper until I was drowning. And then I pulled Mom down with me. And now I've pulled you down too. That's not an excuse. It's not an excuse. Daniel looked up at me, and I saw something in his eyes I hadn't seen in years. Clarity. Raw, painful clarity. It's an explanation. It's context. But it's not an excuse. What I did was wrong. What Mom did was wrong. And you have every right to destroy us for it. He stood up, walked to the center of the room, and looked me straight in the eye. So do it, he said. Press charges. Sue us. Burn it all down. You're right. We deserve it. I stared at my son. This broken man who carried my name, and I felt something shift in my chest. You want me to forgive you, I said. That's what this is. You think if you confess and accept punishment, I'll just let it go. No, Daniel said firmly. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I'm not asking for it. I'm just telling you the truth. Finally, after months of lies, I'm telling you the truth. You're right about all of it. And whatever you decide to do, I'll accept it. Margaret made a sound, something between a sob and a gasp. But I need you to know, Daniel continued, his voice breaking, that I love you. Even though I betrayed you. Even though I'm a screw-up who ruined everything. I love you, Dad. And I'm sorry that love wasn't enough to stop me from hurting you. The room fell silent except for Margaret's quiet crying. I stood there, looking at my son and my wife, two people who had wounded me deeper than I'd ever been wounded before. I had the power to destroy them. The law was on my side. Justice was on my side. Righteousness was on my side. And I thought about James. I thought about him sitting alone in his house, eating dinner by himself, celebrating holidays with no one, dying with no one to hold his hand. I thought about his son who'd tried to reconcile and been turned away, who died thinking his father hated him. I thought about 7 grandchildren James had never met. I thought about 15 years of being right and being alone. My hand went to my pocket, feeling the card James had given me. His number, raised and clear under my thumb. I need to make a call, I said quietly. I walked out of the room, leaving Margaret and Daniel standing there, confused. I went into my study, closed the door, and pulled out the card. My hands were shaking as I dialed the number. It rang 3 times before James answered. Hello. It's ZAHA, I said. The man from the car? You told me to call before I did anything irrevocable. I'm glad you called, James said, and I could hear the relief in his voice. Where are you right now? In my house. They're both here, my wife and son. They confessed. They apologized. And I'm standing here with the power to destroy them, and I don't know what to do. What do you want to do? I want them to pay, I said, the rage surging back. I want them to suffer the way I'm suffering. I want them to understand what they took from me. Okay, James said calmly. That's honest. What else? What else do you want? Underneath the rage, underneath the pain, what else is there? I closed my eyes, and to my horror, I started crying. 68 years old, standing in my study, crying like a child. I want my family back, I whispered. I want to go back to before this happened. I want my brother to still be alive. I want to trust my wife again. I want my son to be someone I'm proud of. You want what you can't have, James said gently. The past, the innocence, the trust before it was broken. Yes. ZAHA, I can't give you that. Revenge can't give you that. Forgiveness can't give you that. It's gone. That version of your family, that version of your life, it's gone forever. The question is, what are you going to build in its place? I don't know how to forgive this, I said. Then don't, James said, and his answer surprised me. Don't forgive it. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Forgiveness isn't required. But you can choose something else. What? You can choose not to destroy them. You can choose to create space for something new to grow. It won't be what you had before. It might not even be good, at least not for a long time. But it will be something other than rubble and ashes. They don't deserve. Forget about what they deserve, James said, his voice firm now. Think about what you deserve. Do you deserve to spend the next 10, 15, 20 years, however long you have left, eating dinner alone, celebrating holidays alone, dying alone with no one to hold your hand? I'd rather be alone than betrayed again. Would you? James challenged. Really? I thought that too, ZAHA. For 15 years I thought that. And now I'm 72 and blind and desperately, achingly lonely, and I would give everything I have for one more chance to sit across a dinner table from my children and hear about their lives. I heard him take a shaky breath. Don't be me, he said quietly. Please. Don't choose being right over being loved. Don't choose pride over peace. Don't make my mistakes. What should I do? I asked, feeling like a child asking for guidance. Go back in that room, James said, and tell them the truth. All of it. Tell them you're furious. Tell them you're hurt. Tell them you don't know if you can ever trust them again. Tell them this might not work. But also tell them you're willing to try. And if they betray me again, then you'll deal with it then. But at least you'll know you gave them, and yourself, a chance. I wiped my eyes, trying to pull myself together. James, I said, thank you. For the ride. For the story. For this. Call me tomorrow, he said. Or next week. Or whenever you need to talk to someone who understands. That's what friends do. Friends, I repeated. Is that what we are? We pretended to be friends for a car ride, James said with a smile in his voice. Might as well make it real. I hung up and sat in my study for another minute, gathering my courage. Then I stood up, opened the door, and walked back into the living room. Margaret and Daniel were sitting on the couch, side by side, holding hands like two people waiting for a verdict. I stood in front of them, and they looked up at me with identical expressions of fear and hope. I'm not pressing charges, I said. The relief that flooded their faces was almost painful to watch. But, I continued, and the relief froze. There are conditions. Non-negotiable. If you don't agree to all of them, I walk out that door and I call my lawyers. Understood. They both nodded. First, Daniel, you enter a gambling addiction treatment program. Inpatient. Immediately. I'll pay for it, but you don't get to say no. This isn't optional. Okay, Daniel whispered. Second, you both owe me $600,000. I don't care that you spent most of it. That's your problem, not mine. We're going to work out a restitution plan, and you're going to pay me back. It might take 20 years. I don't care. You're going to pay it back. Agreed, Margaret said. Third, we're going to therapy. All three of us. Family therapy. Individual therapy. Whatever it takes. Because this family is broken, and we need help fixing it. Yes, they both said. Fourth, complete honesty. No more secrets. No more lies. If you so much as hide a parking ticket from me, we're done. I will walk away and I won't look back. I promise, Margaret said, her voice shaking. I promise, Daniel echoed. I took a breath, steadying myself. And fifth, you need to understand that I don't forgive you. Not yet. Maybe not ever. I'm choosing not to destroy you. But that doesn't mean everything is okay. It means I'm willing to try to rebuild. But the trust is gone, and it's going to take years to earn it back. If it even can be earned back. We understand, Margaret said, tears streaming down her face. Do you? I looked between them. Do you really understand that this is going to be hard? That there will be days when I can't stand to look at you? Days when I regret this choice? Days when I wonder if I should have just burned it all down? Yes, Daniel said. And we'll be there for those days. Even when you hate us. Especially when you hate us. I nodded slowly, feeling something loosening in my chest. Not forgiveness, not yet, but something like the possibility of it. The space for something new to grow. Then we start tomorrow, I said. Daniel, you start researching treatment programs tonight. Margaret, you find us a family therapist. And I paused, considering. I'm going to figure out how to be a person again. Because right now, I don't even know who I am. Margaret stood up and took a tentative step toward me. Can I hug you? I almost said no. Almost pushed her away. But then I thought about James, eating dinner alone, and I nodded. She wrapped her arms around me, and I stood there stiffly, not hugging back, but not pushing away either. Daniel joined us, and we stood there in our living room. Three broken people trying to figure out how to become a family again. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't even really reconciliation yet. But it was a start. 3 months later, I sat on the front porch on a Saturday afternoon in January, watching snow fall gently onto our lawn. Inside, Margaret was making dinner. Real dinner. Not the silent, mechanical meals we'd shared for years, but actual cooking with music playing and the occasional burst of laughter when something went wrong. Daniel was at his 3-month check-in at the treatment facility, but he'd be home tomorrow. Actually home this time, not just visiting before disappearing into his problems again. He'd been clean for 92 days. I knew because I counted them. My phone buzzed. A text from a number I'd saved 3 months ago. James, how are you doing today? I smiled and typed back. ZAHA, better than yesterday. Worse than I hope tomorrow will be. James, that's the most honest answer anyone's ever given me. Are we still on for dinner Tuesday? ZAHA, yes. Mark is still okay to drive you over? James, he insists. I think he likes your wife's cooking. ZAHA, we all do. See you Tuesday. The therapy had been brutal. Individual sessions where I'd had to confront my own failures. The emotional distance James had mentioned. The years of checking out. The way I'd let work become more important than presence. Family sessions where we'd all said things that couldn't be unsaid. Where wounds had been opened before they could heal. Margaret and I were different now. Not better, exactly, but more honest. We'd separated for 6 weeks while we figured things out. She'd stayed with her sister, I'd stayed in the house, and we both had space to decide if we even wanted to try. We decided to try. Not because everything was fixed. Not because I'd forgiven her. But because James had been right. I didn't want to spend my remaining years alone, and neither did she. So we were trying. Slowly. Carefully. Like two people learning to walk again after a terrible accident. Daniel was paying back the money. $50 a month from his new job as a sales clerk, which at that rate would take him about 1,000 years, but it was the principle of it. He was working steps, attending meetings, rebuilding himself from the ground up. He'd relapsed once, 6 weeks in. Came to me ashamed and terrified, certain I'd kick him out and give up on him. Instead, I'd driven him back to the facility myself, sat with him while he checked himself back in for a 2-week intensive, and told him I'd be there when he got out. Because that's what James would have done if he'd had the chance. The front door opened, and Margaret stepped out with 2 mugs of coffee. She handed one to me and sat in the chair beside mine. Not too close, respecting the space I still needed, but close enough. "It's beautiful," she said, watching the snow. "It is." We sat in silence for a few minutes. Comfortable silence this time. Or at least, getting there. "James called earlier," Margaret said. "He wanted to know if we'd come to dinner at his place next month." "Just us?" "No." She smiled. "His daughter is coming. Elizabeth. First time in 15 years. He asked if we'd be there as moral support, I think. And proof that reconciliation is possible." I felt my throat tighten. "He reached out to her?" "With our help. You gave him the courage, ZAHA. Watching us try, even though we're still figuring it out, it gave him the courage to try with his own family." I thought about James, alone in his house for 15 years, eating dinner by himself, thinking it was too late. "Tell him yes," I said. "We'll be there." Margaret reached over and took my hand. I let her, and we sat there holding hands in the cold, watching snow fall on a lawn we'd maintained together for 3 decades. It wasn't forgiveness yet, but it was something. 6 months later, the backyard was full of people. James and his daughter Elizabeth, who looked so much like him it was startling. Marcus, who'd become a friend to all of us. Daniel, 7 months clean, actually smiling for the first time in years. Margaret, laughing at something Elizabeth said. And Emma, our daughter who'd flown in from Seattle when we'd finally told her everything. She'd been furious at first, then sad, then determined to help us all heal. We were grilling burgers on a Saturday in June, and it was messy and imperfect and loud, and it was the most alive I'd felt in years. James sat in a lawn chair, his face turned toward the sun he couldn't see, listening to the sounds of family, not his by blood, but his by choice. "How did you know?" he'd asked me a few weeks ago. "How did you know you were making the right choice?" I didn't, I told him honestly. I still don't. But I knew that destroying them would definitely be the wrong choice. So I picked the only other option and hoped it would work out. "Has it?" he'd asked. I'd thought about it, about the hard days, the therapy sessions where we'd all cried, the moments when I'd wanted to walk away, the slow, painful rebuilding of something that looked nothing like what we'd had before, but might, someday, be something better. "It's working out," I'd said finally. "Not perfectly, not easily, but it's working." Now, watching Daniel flip burgers with Emma teasing him about his technique, watching Margaret and Elizabeth planning another dinner, watching James smile in the sunshine, I felt something I hadn't felt in almost a year. Peace. Not happiness. Not yet, maybe not ever in the way it used to be. But peace. The choice I'd made that day, standing in my living room with the power to destroy my family, listening to a blind man's wisdom on a phone, had changed everything. Not because forgiveness fixed everything. Not because revenge was wrong and mercy was right. But because I'd chosen to create space for something new to grow instead of burning down everything that existed. And in that space, slowly, carefully, painfully, we were all becoming people again. James had his daughter back. I had my family back. We were all still broken, still healing, still figuring it out. But we were figuring it out together. And that made all the difference. CTA number 3, final. If this story touched you, if you've been there, if you're standing at that crossroads right now between revenge and redemption, leave a comment below. Your story matters. Your choice matters. And you're not alone. Thank you so much for watching my story all the way to the end. Your support means everything. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and drop a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts.